Hey everybody, my name is Chris Whitesides and I'm from California State University Northridge Associated Students Outdoor Adventures. Today we're going to jump into a virtual tour of Pinnacles National Park. This program is put on in collaboration with California State University Monterey Bay and Cal State San Marcos. So thank you all for helping out and put this on. Right now we're going to jump in with Ranger Sarah and Ranger Ariana as they guide us through Google Earth in a virtual tour throughout the surrounding area and throughout Pinnacles National Park as well, telling us about some of the wildlife, some of the geologic history, and then answering some questions that you all might have at the very end. So for the next 40 minutes, please do enjoy. Thanks so much.
I'm going to zoom on in so you can see where in the country we're located. So we're located in the central coast of California. We're actually only about 80 miles or so south of San Francisco, which is interesting because a lot of people have never heard of the park, and we are located near one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. So I have this picture here I wanted to show, so we'll give that a second to load. But this is an image of some of the tribes that were located in this area before European settlers like the Spanish came here. So the two tribes that were closest to the park were the Shillone and the Amamutsin. So they both still have pretty close ties to the park. The Amamutsin have worked with the park very closely for a number of years. And the Shillone tribe actually was located down in Bakersfield, and they've been reconnecting with their past. So both tribes still very active and present in the park, and we're very fortunate to have their participation and their cooperation with the park. So we're happy to partner with them. The reason we mention that is because a lot of what the park protects to what we consider a natural state was actually already altered by these tribes that were in the region. So a lot of what we see here is thanks to the tribes that lived in this region before Europeans came here. So the park was originally established by Theodore Roosevelt in 1908. So that was before the Park Service was even established. So the National Park Service didn't get established until 1916. So in 1908, we were established as a national monument. We even have one of the original monument signs that we keep up here just to remember our status. Early on, there wasn't a lot of real appreciation for Pinnacles as being a national park. It was really more known to locals as being a really special place. And before it became a national monument, it was actually Forest Service. And the National Park Service and the federal government wasn't that thrilled to be managing the park then. There was actually some local homesteaders that really fought to make Pinnacles a national monument. And from there, since our inception, we've been kind of fighting to become a national park. So just a little bit of brief overview before we get into why we became a national park after we were a national monument. So hopefully this is loading on your end, but you can kind of see the overview of the park. It looks very different from the surrounding area. And we'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see that a little bit better. First wanted to pull up a map of the park, just so you can see generally what the park looks like. So we are about 26,000 acres, which is about 42 square miles. Originally, the monument was set aside as being about 2,000 acres, or about 3 square miles. So we've expanded quite a bit in that time. Let's see. All right, so we've got actually 5 distinct plant communities or ecosystems in the park. So the first one, and Pinnacles is most known for its rocky formation. So the first ecosystem that we have in the park is called Rock and Scree. So those are our like our high peaks area, the big volcanic rock formations that we're known for. Generally not as much plant life. There's a lot of lichen that grows up there. That's just our first ecosystem. The most prevalent ecosystem in the park is chaparral. So we are considered we have a Mediterranean climate here, which there's only about 5 Mediterranean climates in the world. So we're characterized by having really dry dry, hot summers and cool, wet winters. So a lot of the park is covered in chamise and manzanita, very dry weather plants. So we also have grasslands in the park. So those are more down in the bottomlands by where the campground is located. And then we've got a lot of oak woodlands as well. So these really beautiful kind of forested, more forested regions of the park that are dominated by oaks. We've got a couple varieties of oak in the park. And then lastly, we've got riparian areas. So we've got a couple creeks that run through the park. And those are the areas where you're gonna see the most greenery. You'll go from being in a really dry, arid part of the park, and then you'll walk into this very lush green habitat that is characterized by being close to water. So those are just the 5 plant communities, ecosystems that we have in the park. Oops, I went too far ahead of myself. So one question we get asked a lot is, what's the difference between a national park and a national monument? Because we did become a national park in 2013, so that was during Obama's term. So the biggest difference is what we tell people is the biggest difference is just title, essentially. But a national monument can be made by a sitting president. A national park has to be authorized by an act of Congress. So we were the most recent national park site up until a few years ago. Now there are a couple newer ones than us, but there are about 61, I believe, national park sites and over 400 national park units managed by the Park Service. So that includes national monuments, national parks, national lake shores. The other question we get asked a lot is, why did we become a national park? After being a national monument for over 100 years, people want to know what made us become a national park. In my opinion, I believe the biggest reason we became a national park is because of the amazing geologic history we have here. The story of our geology is really fascinating, and it's very unique as well. So in order to tell that story, we have to go way back in time and actually to another location. So we're traveling now about 195 miles south of where we're currently located. So this is in Neenach, which is down by Southern California near Lancaster, which is not too far from Los Angeles. So this is where the Pinnacles Formation originated. So about 30, oops, a little technical difficulties. So I'll give that a second to load. All right, so hopefully this is showing up on your screen. So about 30 million years ago, you had 2 tectonic plates kind of coming together. So you had the subduction of the Farallon plate. So subduction means going underneath the North American plate. And as that Farallon plate subducted under the North American plate, that plate was subjected to a lot of heat and pressure. So it started to melt and become magma deep under the surface of the Earth. Then about 23 million years ago, all of that magma built up and created pressure. That pressure started to build up so much that it started to kind of explode out of the surface of the Earth. And that magma underneath the surface of the Earth was very viscous. Think of toothpaste. And as it kind of exploded, it would dry up around the openings in the Earth, so around the vents of the volcanoes. And it would get kind of crusty. So the way I like to imagine it is if you had a tube of toothpaste, which kind of dried up around the rim of the tube, and if you squeeze that toothpaste really hard, it would kind of explode and mix in with those dried bits of magma. So a lot of our rock here at the park is breccia, which means that you can see chunks of rock that are mixed in with the surrounding rock. So we also have a very common type of rock that's called lapilli tuff, and that's what our nature center is built out of. So behind me you can see this chimney is actually made from the lapilli tuff, and tuff is a type of rock that is when ash gets mixed in with magma, it has this really beautiful green color. So this is a very unique rock to Pinnacles, and a lot of our buildings are made out of this rock. So the volcanic field that was originally Pinnacles looked a little bit like this. This is kind of, to our best imagination, what Pinnacles looked like about 23 million years ago. So small little volcanoes here and there. It wasn't like, when you think of volcanoes, you probably think of like Mount Rainier, like very stereotypical volcanoes. These were small little volcanoes down south in Lancaster. So once the plate was done subducting, the Farallon plate kind of disappeared, and you had the Pacific plate right behind it. And when the Pacific plate hit the North American plate, it was actually moving kind of alongside of it. And when it was moving alongside, it broke off about 2/3 of the Pinnacles Formation, and started carrying that 2/3 of the formation north with it. You can see in this picture on the left-hand side, that's the Pacific plate, and on the right-hand side, you have the North American plate. So since that time, millions of years have passed, and the plates are moving at about 1/2 inch to 1 inch every year. So kind of about the rate that your fingernails grow. So now the volcanic formations are where we are now, which is about 200 miles north of where they originally started out. So the interesting thing about the Pinnacles Formation is that the formations that remained down south in Lancaster eroded much quicker than the formations here today. And the reason for that is they were exposed to the elements, to water and wind from the beginning. So what those formations look like now is this, which is very different from what our formations look like here. The reason our formations look a little bit different, and I'm gonna go on to our next location so you can see what our High Peaks area looks like. So as we started moving north, we were kind of shielded by 2 other fault lines. And one thing I forgot to mention was when the Pacific plate hit the North American plate, it actually created the San Andreas Fault, which if you're from California, you're probably familiar with the San Andreas Fault. It's the reason that we get a lot of earthquakes in this region. So Pinnacles ended up getting kind of pushed underground and covered by other rocks and things. So we were actually shielded from the effects of erosion for a number of years. And when they finally kind of eroded away to the original volcano formations, we haven't been eroding as quickly. So that's kind of why you have, they don't really look like volcanoes as they would have, millions of years ago, but they look very much different than the formation that has remained in Lancaster. So hopefully you can see that I'm just kind of moving around in this space so you can see these volcanic rock formations that have eroded over time. In a geologic sense, it's been a very short period of time that they've been eroding. However, we're very lucky to be able to witness the Pinnacles Formation as they are today, because in a very short geologic time period, which is much longer than our lifetime, these rocks will disappear. They will erode completely like the rocks down in Lancaster. So we're very fortunate to be able to be witnessing them in this state. So the geologic history, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, is one of the reasons that we became a national park. But the geology isn't just fascinating in itself, it's also shaped the different plants and animals that live in the park. So I'm gonna hand it over to Ariana, and she's gonna talk about some of the ways that geology has shaped other things in the park.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Ranger Ariana, if you forgot from the beginning. So to continue off of what Sarah was saying, the geology at this park is incredible. And it also created something super unique here at our park that's a huge attraction, and that's our Talus Caves. So many of you probably know when you think of caves, you think of, sorry, let me change my, realized I didn't do that. Wait, what is this? Okay, now I'm just moving us over to the Bear Gulch area, which is where our caves are located. And actually, this picture gives you a really good idea and is going to help in my explanation. So Talus Caves formed. They're a unique type of cave. They are not like the caves that you may have seen at other parks, solution caves, or caves that form when tubes of magma, lava moves and there's a big tube. It's not like that. Our caves formed basically when very large rocks fell from above and got stuck in the narrow canyon. So you can kind of see here this side view of rocks getting lodged in between a narrow passage between the rocks. So what happens is, as those pinnacles have been eroded, as earthquakes have happened, water, wind have shaped the pinnacles, and some of them have broken off and actually fallen to the ground, where then they have gotten stuck. So we are actually passing under all of those giant rocks that have fallen when we're going into our Talus Caves, which is really awesome and really cool that we can be here now when these caves exist, because this landscape is constantly changing. You know, in a few thousand years from now, which is a short term in geologic time, these caves may not exist here at all. So it's really cool that we get to explore them. So lots of wildlife in this park uses the geologic formations that we have. And an organism that uses these caves is, and hopefully you can see the bat, is the Townsend big-eared bat is their species name. And we actually, Pinnacles has, if not the largest population of Townsend big-eared bats in from all the way from San Francisco down to Baja California. So these bats actually spend a lot of time at Pinnacles. And right now in June, at May and June, the caves will be closed to protect those bats, because the bats actually come in during this time and nurse their babies in our caves. So they give birth to pups. They give live birth. They are mammals like us, and they will nurse and take care of their pups inside the caves for these next 2 months. So the rest of the year, though, at least half the caves are open. The upper section of the caves remains closed for most of the year to protect the bats that hibernate, as well as just rest for the day inside of our caves. So we at least can kind of divide it so the bats have their area and the people can still come and go through the caves. The caves are completely open usually 2 months out of the year, October and February. Sometimes they're not open at all just because maybe the bats don't leave in those months, but we have scientists that'll go check it out, see if the bats have left for that time. And during October and February, you can actually explore the entire cave system, which is awesome. And I definitely recommend trying to come during one of those months. It's really cool. So we also have 13 other species of bat in the park, but it's actually only the Townsends that really makes use of our caves. The other bats in the parks will hide behind tree bark or go into small rock crevices, but that works out because we have the perfect geology for those other species of bat as well that just want to stay in those little cracks in the rock. So another species that is very exciting, let me move us along here. So now I've moved us over to the other side of the park. This is actually where our Balconies Caves are located. So we have 2 sets of caves in the park. Balconies Caves is usually open all year long, but it is a little smaller section of cave. So the Bear Gulch Caves is a much larger, and I definitely recommend coming during a time when you can explore those as well. But both caves are awesome. So next, that other organism that is actually incredibly special to the park is the California condor. And the California condor was actually reintroduced into the park in 2003. So if you had come here before 2003, you had almost no chance of seeing the California condors in the wild. In the 1980s, they discovered that there were only 22 condors left in the park. And only 22 in the entire world, not in Pinnacles. So by 1987, they had collected all of the condors that were in the wild and brought them into captive breeding programs. And once they kind of repopulated a little bit with the zoos that were involved in this program, which is the San Diego Zoo, the Los Angeles Zoo, some other views, I think the Oregon Zoo are involved in this. And once they got some to start releasing into the wild, Pinnacles was evaluated, and it was decided that Pinnacles has the perfect rock formations and the perfect habitat for the California condor. And you guys can see in this photo, The California condor doesn't really make a nest. They don't make a fancy nest like some other birds in a tree. They're actually just looking for a nice cliff edge where they can kind of tuck themselves away in there, but it's big enough for them. And they just lay the one egg right there on that cliff edge. And this is what they need for their nesting habitat. So it just worked out that because these rocks were dragged here along the fault line, they're now here in suitable habitat for the California condor. And it's actually really exciting. There's over 300 California condors in the wild now, not just at Pinnacles, but in other national parks too. The Grand Canyon, Glen Canyon National Recreation Area has them. Baja California has them. And then even they're trying to put up a population up north in Redwoods State Park and National Park. So we actually have 2 active condor nests in the park right now. One does have a chick that has hatched, and one of them we're still waiting on that chick to hatch, which is really exciting, really exciting. And there has still been, and as I said, there's about 300 in the wild, but they are still critically endangered. They are not in the clear yet. I know 300 from 22 seems like a really big deal, and it is, but the condors are really slow reproducers. They only lay 1 egg every 1.5 years, and they live up to 70+ years. So they are slow reproducers that actually can only start laying eggs when they're about 10 years old, just a little shy of 10 years old. So it takes a long time for 2 condor parents to replace themselves. And we also have a big issue that's still facing the condors is lead poisoning. And you guys might be wondering, how are condors getting lead poisoning? Lead poisoned? Well, it comes back to the type of ammunition that folks use in this area for hunting. And just to preface, hunters are not the problem. We recognize that hunters play a big role in ecosystems and keeping down those high populations of deer and other animals that would grow out of control without hunters there. But the thing is that for a very long time, the cheapest and most available ammunition was lead ammunition. And lead bullets are different from other bullets because when they hit something, they shatter into 1,000 little pieces and spread throughout the body of the animal that it hit. So, and what happens is hunters, maybe they're out 2 miles in the backcountry. They don't want to carry that entire animal, all the guts and all the heavy stuff that they're not going to end up using. And they want to do a good thing and leave some of that stuff behind so that animals like the condor can eat that stuff because they are strict carrion eaters. They do not eat any living thing. It's all dead stuff. And as condors are scavengers, so as they're looking for stuff and they see that gut pile that a hunter left behind, they're thinking, great. But what the condor doesn't know is that that gut pile can be filled with tiny particles of lead. And at least 40% of all condors' deaths are from lead poisoning, and many don't make it into adulthood because of this lead poisoning. And now in California, lead ammunition is illegal to use for hunting and eating purposes, but people can still bring this ammunition from out of state, as well as maybe they just had it in their stockpiles, so they're still trying to get rid of it. But it is something that seriously hampers the progress of the California condor, and they're still struggling to be a stable population, and this is part of that. So there are other alternatives. Copper ammunition is getting very comparable in price to the lead ammunition. So it is going in a good direction, and hopefully we're going to see in the next few years less and less condors dying of lead poisoning. And just, also, this is not just for the condor. This is for all kinds of scavengers in our ecosystem. Turkey vultures, eagles, all kinds of animals come to these carcasses. It's not just for the condor. As well, it's good, it's better for us as well. Any hunter who is using lead ammunition to shoot a deer and then take that home to eat, they're gonna end up eating a lot of that lead themselves, and their family as well will be eating that lead. So it is, just a good thing to spread the word on and spread the message that lead ammunition is not good for our environment and not good for people either. So yeah, so this has been incredible that we have been allowed, I mean, not allowed, but condors have been released here. And now if you come to the park on any day, you have a good chance of seeing a California condor flying. And I just wanted to show you guys this picture, and that's the condor with the chick. This picture shows a turkey vulture, that's this one, flying next to a California condor. And I know it's just a picture, so it's hard to tell, but the condor's wingspan is 9.5 feet, 9.5 to 10 feet. A turkey vulture's wingspan is only about 5 feet. So you're looking for a bird that's double the size of the turkey vulture, which is crazy. They're incredible birds. Every single one has a tag on them, so you can also know that way. Except if it was born in the wild, then it doesn't have a tag yet, but most adult condors have a tag, which is really, really awesome and really cool that we can see them here, and that they are starting to come back and actually have chicks in the wild. Just want to we can, I'm sure everyone has many questions about the condors and I could talk about them forever, but maybe we'll save that for the end. I just wanted to go back that this geology and the geography that we are in really shapes the climate of Pinnacles. Sarah mentioned before, this is a Mediterranean climate. So it's, we have cool and some rainy winters, but then as summer comes, it gets incredibly hot and dry here. Everything dries up. All of the above surface streams dry up. So it does get really, really hot here in June, July, and August. It can be well over 100 degrees. Maybe if that doesn't sound like a good thing for you, which it's not a good thing for many people, I would definitely suggest coming, in the fall or in the spring. Those are really great times to come and visit the park. Let's see, and it can be confusing because on the coast, if you're coming from Monterey, it could be 70 degrees that day in Monterey, but 100 degrees in Pinnacles. So it's, it really can be hard to adjust to that temperature change if you're not used to it. So that being said, though, Pinnacles offers so many recreational opportunities. Just in this last couple minutes, I'll share with you. Of course, hiking is huge. Hiking in the park is incredible, but also rock climbing. And in this 3D photo I'm trying to share with you guys, this was actually taken by a climber, so you can see their bag, and then they are climbing up here, and these are the views that you get when you go rock climbing at Pinnacles, which is incredible. And here we have another climber looking out off the side there. So it's just stunning. Many famous rock climbers have gotten their start climbing here at Pinnacles. It's really well known for its rock climbing, as well as also camping is a thing. It's a great thing to do is camp here and then see the stars at night. The night sky here is absolutely incredible. If you like to take photographs or have a telescope and want to come see the night sky, this is a good place to do it. We are free of a lot of light pollution here. So that's really awesome. This climbing picture. Yeah, there's a starry photo too. There's a starry photo. So hold on, as it's loading, there is a beautiful photo of the night sky. So this is something that many, many people love to come and do here. And you are allowed on the trails after dark. I would just, of course, be safe, be careful, bring a partner, let someone know where you're going. But it is, yes, it's absolutely beautiful. It's incredible to do night hikes here. And then finally, bird watching and wildlife viewing. This is a great park for all of that. California condors, which is an exceedingly rare bird, you have a good chance of seeing here. We also have tons of other birds that like to come through here, and countless species of mammals. We have mountain lions, bobcats, we have coyote, we have jackrabbits, all kinds of things are making their home here at Pinnacles. So I really, if you haven't visited, and I know some of you already have, maybe if you've visited already, you'll come back with new enthusiasm, or if you haven't visited, you're gonna be really excited to come out here. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this little quick presentation about all of the highlights in the park. Of course, we could talk about all of this stuff for each thing could have its own program. We could talk about condors for an hour. Yeah, but I think now is when we can switch to doing some Q&A, any specific questions, anything maybe we left out. I know that 30 minutes is a really short time to get everything in. So
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Ariana. We do have a few questions that are coming in live. And the first one I'd like to ask you both are just, what are some of your favorite hikes? We have some viewers here that are planning on visiting and even camping at the park and want to know just what are your favorite hikes?
Yeah, do you want to go first?
Sure. That's such a hard question because there's so many beautiful hikes in the park. I mean, a popular one is the Bear Gulch Caves up to the reservoir. It's about a 2-mile round trip hike. If you are planning to come, in the next month or so, the caves will be continue to be closed just for social distancing. But if you are planning to come later in the year, maybe next spring or in the fall, that's a really great hike to do. It's pretty short and you see a lot of the park. Another one of my favorites, which I actually didn't get to do until I was here for a while, was the South Wilderness Trail. It is considered wilderness, so the trail is a little bit less maintained. So if you go on it, you want to make sure that you're pretty confident, keeping track of the trail because it's not as established as your typical trails. But it's just a really beautiful trail. You really feel like you're alone out there. You get a lot of really great solitude. But I would say those are some of my favorite.
Yeah, I would just add, yes, like the Bear Gulch Caves to the reservoir is, a must see, but also the High Peaks Trail. The High Peaks Loop that goes up from Condor Gulch to the High Peaks. It goes through a section called the Steep and Narrows, which is probably the most iconic hike in the park. It has these really cool sections where you go up into these really pointy parts of the pinnacles, and there's actually steps carved into the sides of the rocks, and you can climb up the steps, and there's a hand railing and you're kind of clinging to the side, and it's really cool. Really impressive, especially because that trail, so this is part of it. This trail was created in the late 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. So this is left over from them, which is incredible that they did this, and now that we're able to still hike on this incredible trail. And just the views of the park from that trail is incredible. And your best shot of seeing a condor is probably up in this High Peaks Trail.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. Every time I've been to the park personally, that's always where I see condors. It's a must-see. I would totally recommend that. In terms of, there was also another question about waterfalls, and I know typically on your way up to the Bear Gulch Reservoir, depending on the season, you can see waterfalls there. There was a question regarding, is there an east and a west side, which there is, and how can you best go across both of those sides?
It's difficult. So unfortunately, our two sides of the park do not meet in the middle, because if there were to be a road there, it would go right through the Pinnacles, our incredible geologic formation. So right now, in order to get to one side to the other, it takes about an hour-and-a-half drive. You can absolutely hike it though. That's incredible. You have a couple options. You could go up to the High Peaks and then down the other side to the west side, or taking balconies, Old Pinnacles to Balconies Caves from the east side to the west side is actually a flat hike that actually just takes you all the way around kind of and gets you to that other side. And I would say, like our visitor centers and our campground is on the east side, but especially for folks who maybe are not looking to hike that much, the view from the west side is absolutely stunning. The view from that side is actually the side that convinced them to protect this area. When they saw that view, like the view from the west side is what they wanted to protect in 1908. So without doing anything, you can get an incredible view of the Pinnacles. So for folks that, and many people, just want to drive, or maybe they just want to bird watch, they don't want to do any crazy hiking, and that west side might be the best option for that, because you do get those incredible views without doing anything.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one thing we do encounter from time to time is people who end up on the wrong side of the park. So just make sure whatever side you enter. So if you're coming to the east side, you've gone through Hollister most likely. If you're going to the west side, you've gone through Soledad. So we just recommend when you come here, just make sure you know which side that you started on, so that you don't end up on the wrong side of the park, because then you do have to end up hiking all the way back. There is no way to get you from one side to the other without hiking. So if you don't have your car there. So just when you come here, just make sure you know where you're going, what side you started on, and look at the trail map to make sure you end up where you started.
Yeah, and please feel free to like reach out to the park. Like if you want to give us a call, or send an email if you have any more specific questions after this, need some help planning your trip here, what trails, what's it going to be like on this month. We're happy to answer all those questions. So yeah.
Thank you for that. We have a couple of questions coming in, and I know we just have a few more minutes of your time, but these are centered around the animals at the park. So does Pinnacles keep any kind of count of the animals via a tracking system of any kind?
Yeah, so well, specifically with the condors, every condor, I'm going to grab a little prop, but every condor, Ariana mentioned this, gets a tag, a wing tag like this that is it's a radio tag, so we can track them with a device called a Yagi antenna, which is this big antenna looking thing that we spin in the air. We're able to track condors that way. So that's one way we track animals in the park. We don't track specific bats in the park, but we do count the bats every now and then. So we also have some USGS researchers that come out a couple times a year, and they actually will put little teeny tiny radio transmitters on bats, just a few bats, and they'll track them just to see where they're roosting, and just find out a little bit more about their behavior. Other than that,
we do like surveys. Like just recently we had an annual butterfly count where, as many people, even volunteers, can come out, and we try to identify as many butterfly species as we can. Things like that, where we do try to like kind of do some inventorying and surveying. But yeah, I think the condors are the ones that are most heavily like surveyed and tracked, and their locations.
We do a big Christmas bird count every year. It's an annual thing. It's not just for this park, it's for all different areas where volunteers can come out and just, similar to the butterfly study, just go out and identify as many bird species as you can. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's a great way to get involved.
And I was just going to say that beginners are always welcome. Like, don't think that if you're not a birder that you can't join something like that. That is a great way to come out and learn about birds. If you have at all any interest in learning more, yes, please, like, just, look for Pinnacles Christmas bird count when it gets closer. And please, we love more volunteers.
What a fantastic way to get involved. And I know there's also the Friends of Pinnacles out there, where you do some trail restoration and different ways to really just kind of give back to the national park system. So thanks for updating us on all of that. The final question that I want to leave you all with is, we're all here stuck inside of our homes wondering, when does Pinnacles open up, and what will that leveling out of the restrictions kind of look like from your end, and how can people stay most up to date with all of those information?
Yeah, great question. So Pinnacles, we actually, from the beginning of this pandemic, we kept our campground open to RVers, just so that people had a place to stay, those who didn't have anywhere else to go. And since then, we've been opening up gradually. So first we opened the park to walk-ins and bicycles. People parked on the outside. Currently, we've opened up both sides of the park to vehicles. So on the west side, you can drive all the way to the end of the road and park there between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 8 p.m. And on the east side, you can drive as far as the visitor center. Again, same hours, 7:30 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. So once you park at the visitor center, you can walk via the bench trail. You can get to the South Wilderness Trail. You can get to the Bear Gulch Day Use Area, the Old Pinnacles Trail. Just keep in mind that you'll be doing a little bit more hiking maybe than you anticipated, since you won't be able to drive to the end of the road on the east side. You can also still camp in the park, so if you want to camp, make your reservation online at recreation.gov. The campground is run by a private contractor, so everything needs to be done through them. But yeah, we're close to full operations. We don't have our shuttle running, and we don't have the visitor centers open.
Yeah, so it's free to enter right now. If you do come in the next couple weeks, the fee will be waived. But we are going to slowly increase it more. I think for as far as where to go for updates, we update our website, we post on social media, especially our Facebook, as soon as there's an update, as well as you can give us a call. We're here to answer the phone. So if you're like unsure on specifics, or like if there was a change and you're like, what does this change mean? Feel free to give us a call.
And we also post statuses of trails that are open and closed. Currently, as I mentioned before, the both caves are closed. One, just coincidentally, the bats are pupping at that time, but also the caves are very narrow, so it's pretty impossible to do social distancing. So both caves are closed until further notice. The steep and narrow section of the high peaks is closed because, as you can see in this picture, it's impossible to not run into people when you're going up and down that. And then the Moses Spring section of the Bear Gulch area is closed. So if you wanted to come to the park specifically for those trails, just keep checking back on the website to see when those trails are fully open.
And another huge thank you to Ranger Chris, who's been answering all of our questions in the Q&A section. That has been awesome. I'm going to hand it off to Chris at CSUN. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Casey from Monterey, for helping out. Thank you, Ranger Sarah, Ariana, and Ranger Chris. I'll go ahead and throw some links one more time in that chat with other videos that have been posted on our website with other rangers or with staff from CSUN leading tours. And they also have our future programs that are coming up as well. If you had any lingering questions, feel free to send them over to outdooradventures@csun.edu, and we'll make sure they get to the rangers and get you an answer. Otherwise, I wanted to thank you all for taking some time out of your day and your extended lunch break and exploring Pinnacles National Park with us. We hope to see you for a tour again soon.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you here soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.